Good morning. My name's Adam, and we're here today for your Discovery at Home Weather-Resistant Structure Construction program titled Downpour Designs. In this program, we'll learn about materials and structures. You'll construct a shelter in response to a design challenge using materials that you can find around you. That challenge and our purpose is to keep our little paper person dry in some stormy weather. We'll test our shelters with some artificial rain. But while more people are still joining our stream, I want to tell you a little story about a construction project that I was lucky enough to be able to observe for years and years in the woods behind my parents' house. You can use this story to start thinking about the steps of construction, things like the purpose, the materials, and modifications. So there's this little brook and a pond that runs through this kind of wide, low valley. I imagine that little brook must have meandered and kind of carved it out over, whatever, tens of thousands of years. When I was little, I first came across that pond area. We knew it as like the frog pond because there was nice swampy land around it for the frogs. But it was a pretty small pond, and there was a little beaver dam blocking the river, and there was a little beaver lodge in the pond. But when water levels would drop in the summer, when it was dry, there would be the lodge would be pretty close to shore. But it was kind of funny set up there because in that wide valley, there was sort of a wall that almost completely closed it off, except for where the little low beaver dam was. If you stepped downstream and looked at that wall, you could see it was made of big blocks of rock, and it wasn't the local rock. It must have been quarried and brought in. When I was older, talking to an older family member, we learned that that used to be a sawmill, a place where they had a big dam to hold back a big pond and use that to run the saws. And the story that we learned was when they were done with it, they dynamited the dam so there wouldn't be, I guess, an unmaintained pond and dam there. So when they blew that up and there was rock debris, it ended up changing the course downstream. The guy who owned the property was a fisherman, so he'd have some times of the year when he had some downtime. And he took on this project to want to return the stream to the way it used to be. So he was working for years using things that he could get in the woods without power tools. So wood and then a lot of rock and dirt that he could dig to try to divert the stream back to its old course. So we had a human who was building something with his own purpose. And then in parallel, we had the beavers who lived there. And I guess this was great for the beavers because now they had some help. So over the years, I watched this dam be built up and the water level rise with the human working with rocks and dirt because he had his tools, his shovel and his wheelbarrow. And then the beavers, they would cut the trees and drag them in and bank it up with mud. So we had this sort of hybrid dam. We had the old rock, and then in the gap, we had new rock and dirt, and we had new beaver dam. So everybody was working together kind of with their own purposes and kind of with a similar purpose. Well, I think I've been talking about beavers enough. So now that you're hopefully warmed up thinking about humans and other animals building structures, I'll welcome anyone who's joined since the start of the stream. Welcome everyone to our program called Downpour Designs. In this program, we're going to construct a shelter. The purpose of our shelter will be to keep a paper person dry in a rainstorm. I'll get you started with some background information that will hopefully help you start brainstorming ideas and making your plan. We hope you'll share your experience planning, building, testing, and modifying your structures. We'll be watching Flipgrid and our social media pages for your viewer submissions. And your Discovery Center tag submission will also count as an entry to our Show Us Your Science contest, where you'll be entered to win a Science at Home prize pack. But first, let's talk more about structures, materials, shelters, and storms. Today, we will be learning about materials and structures, and then using that knowledge to construct a shelter that will test in a downpour. If you're not sure what the word downpour means, I'll tell you it's a word used to describe a heavy rainfall, when it's pouring down rain. The kind of storm where we might say, it's raining cats and dogs. When I run a program like this in a classroom, I like to ask you lots of questions so you can think about what you already know and I just will help you string it all together. In this video format, I still want to ask you a bunch of questions. So what I'm going to do is ask a question, and then after many of them, I'll give you a few seconds to think about an answer. You can keep it to yourself or yell it out to me at the TV or your device if you're somewhere where you won't disturb other people. You can also share your ideas and answers with whoever you might be watching with. When I do this, I might just be quiet for a few seconds, or I might try to say something helpful or ask another question to give you some inspiration. And depending on how you're watching, you could even pause me. No, I'm just kidding. I wasn't paused. You could just pause me if you want more time to think, talk, or research. We're going to talk about a lot of science today, and we're going to end up planning something that you'll then build. So like a scientist or engineer does, I suggest you get some paper or something else to record your ideas and plans. You can use a mix of words and pictures as you listen to me and as you work yourself. Before jumping right into things, I have a practice question for you as a warm-up. A minute ago, I told you that a downpour is a heavy rainfall, but I didn't give you any examples. So my question for you is, can you think of a type of storm that's so rainy that we might want to use that special word, downpour? Have you ever been caught in a downpour and gotten soaked? If you have been caught in a downpour and gotten soaked, what time of year was it? Well, the first type of storm that comes to mind for me that might produce a downpour is a summer thunderstorm that might come on sudden in a hot afternoon, pour down a bunch of rain, and then move off. The way I think about it, I think we most often use the word downpour when the heavy rain is sudden and doesn't go on for hours and hours. This is the kind of storm that I was thinking of. You see that big thunderhead and you see that rain down the bottom falling down in a sudden heavy downpour. Now that you've had your practice question and you're all warmed up, let's back up to the start of this program. I told you that we're going to learn about materials and structures today. So my first question for you is, what is a structure? Have you heard that word before? If not, does it make you think of anything? Structure. I ask if the word makes you think of anything because it makes me think of the word construct. I did a little research and it turns out that the similar sounding words construct and structure are related to an old Latin word that means to build or pile. So I'm going to do a little piled up building. I have to figure out the right way to put things together so that they work. Great. Let's make this a little more fun. Put this guy on top. Great. A structure is something that we build or arrange in a certain way. If you thought of examples that are built, made, or put together, you might be thinking of a structure. Structures can be big or small. There are many kinds of structures like chairs, tables, houses, schools, bridges, and skyscrapers. Can you think of any other structures? My next question for you is, who builds structures? There are different ways you might think of that question. The examples of structures that I just listed before are all things made by humans. Does my saying that change what you're thinking of? Well, in addition to humans, many other animals build structures too. Can you think of some examples? I have a bunch in mind. Many birds make nests up in the trees and on cliffs. And beavers make dams and streams and build lodges in the pond behind the dam. I have a couple pictures to show you what I'm talking about. I have a nice big eagle's nest here from British Columbia. You see the two eagles sitting up in their big nest up high in the top of the tree. I also have a picture of some humans who have run into a big beaver dam in a stream. You see that big structure across? You see that much smaller little structure built by the humans in their canoe. Ants are a type of insect that famously build big tunnel cities under the ground. I like watching nature documentaries, and I've even seen some fish building beautiful structures underwater. Can you name other animals that make structures? What do they build? This might be fun to think and talk about later with friends and family when you have as much time as you want. But for now, I have another question for you. What are structures made of? We're now coming back to the part at the start where I said we'll learn about materials and structures. Can you think of what materials might be used in the structures in the examples that you thought of, or of the ones that I had just talked about? Well, now we've thought about many examples of structures built by humans and other animals. But now the question is, what do we use to make structures? Depending on their purpose, structures are made from many different materials. A structure might be made of a single material, or they may use more than one. Some common materials are wood, glass, metal, plastic, like this mini chair, 3D printed at the Discovery Center, dirt, and stone. Let's think about some of the materials that those animals use to build their structures. Birds often build nests from wooden sticks, and some use mud too. Beavers build very different structures using bigger sticks and more mud. Humans also build with wood, like in a timber frame house, and we, for thousands of years, have made bricks out of mud. To build larger structures, we often use other materials like metal and glass. All of these materials that we've talked about have different properties. Some materials are strong, some are waterproof, and some can be used to help keep us warm, like the insulation in this house. When planning a structure, it's important to choose a material or several materials with the right properties for your purpose. We need to choose materials that do what we want them to do and for the structure that we want to build. That brings us to the next question. Why do we build structures? What's their purpose? Why do birds build nests? Beavers, dams and lodges, and humans, houses and schools. We make structures for many reasons, but one of the main reasons is to use them as shelters that cover and protect us. Shelters are very important, and we use them every day to shield us from the weather, keeping us safe from snow, heat, wind, and rainstorms. Now for the final question of your science background. Can you design your own shelter? Just kidding. I know the answer is yes. Now that we've explored different shelters, it's time to construct one of your own. Our purpose is to try and keep a little paper person or animal safe and dry in a rainstorm. I hope you'll be as creative as you want to with your shelter, but keep our purpose in mind, staying dry. Find materials to form your shelter, such as recyclables, cardboard, plastic wrap or wax paper, newspaper, tin foil, or Lego. I'd suggest gathering and getting your hands on different materials to help give you inspiration of how they could fit together in a structure and to get you thinking about their material properties. You'll also need a place to test your shelter. Could be a sink, a large plate, a bathtub, or outside. Remember, we're going to be testing with water, so we need to choose somewhere that's safe to make a bit of a mess with water and that's easy to clean up. Of course, there's also the paper person or animal to go in the shelter. There's a paper person template in our learning guide to help you. You can also find some blank, white, or colored paper to draw your own. Just make sure they can fit in the shelter. I really like to use colored construction paper since it's pretty and bright, and it's easy to see a color change when it gets wet. If you want to add a little artistic flair, not only to the architecture of your structure, but also to your test person, then grab some coloring supplies, like crayons, markers, or pencil crayons. It can be fun to add some art into these builds, and even really helpful for some people if it gets you thinking creatively and imaginatively. But I'll sound a little note of caution. Don't get completely lost in the art and forget about the engineering. Speaking of engineering, tools like scissors are often helpful for your build. Just be careful. Depending on your materials and the design that you're planning, you might need items to help you hold your shelter together, such as tape, glue, string, or a stapler. Ask an adult for help if you're going to use a tool like a stapler. Finally, you'll need something to use to make it rain on your shelter. I usually need something that's portable and that I can use inside. So I use a spray bottle. You can also try a watering can, water bottle, garden hose, or the faucet in your sink. If you try this on a rainy day, you could even get an adult to help you test outside in real rain, which I think would be a pretty cool, like, real life test. When it soon comes time for me to stop talking and let you go for it, make your plan for putting your shelter together before you start the build. What steps might you need to build your shelter? What materials and tools do you want to use? What will you use to hold the materials together? And what do you want the shelter to look like? Write your ideas down and draw a picture of your shelter on the learning guide, or explain your ideas to someone before you start building. I started writing down some of the parts that I wanted to use. I was thinking about building it right on the table, but I think that would be too messy. I have a nice big platter around that I'm going to use. To build a frame, like the outside of the structure, I'm going to use some straws that I have. And then I'm going to put walls on the outside. I'm going to try all of the ideas that I thought of: foil, paper, and plastic. So before I get to building, let's do a little bit of drawing. Here's my platter at the bottom where my paper person can stand. And here's my structure: one straw, little connector, a cross for some strength, and I think I'm going to make a big one. I'm going to have a little fun and make a bigger apartment building on this. The same straws and connectors. Straw right there, connector right there, person right there. That looks like the outlines of a plan to me. After that, use your chosen materials to build your shelter following your plan. Get your paper person ready by cutting them out and putting them inside their shelter. Before I test this, I want to do a very different type of build for you. I'm going to put this off to the side. I was thinking I wanted to try a bit of a brick house. I have these nice square granite blocks, and I have a very lucky offcut from something that made me think of a roof for a house. That's what I meant by kind of the inspiration, just seeing something where you're like, yeah, that is a roof. So let's build some walls. I'm going to do a long wall on one side and a shorter wall on the other. And there we go. There's my walls. I'm still a little bit concerned about basement flooding, so I'm going to drop in a little floor in the middle. Maybe I should have did that before the walls. No, we're all right. That's where my person will go, and I will put this roof on. Now, there's obviously a big hole in that, but instead of seeing that as a problem, I'm going to call that a skylight and make a little skylight cover for it. I have a salad container. I'm going to take the roof off. Not the roof, the cover. It's not a roof yet. I'm going to take the cover off and cut a skylight for that. Easy. Just going to do the outsides. Going to watch for sharp plastic that I don't get my fingers cut. Great. Okay, put down my waist. Almost there. Okay. So that's going to slide off, right? So this is when we're talking about connecting materials. I think I'm going to try to get away with just folding it along the peak and getting it to hang there itself. What do you think? Worth trying? So which one should I start with first? I was thinking I was going to test the first one I built first, but this one's made of individual blocks, so it'd be hard to move. So why don't we do this one? grabbed another paper person, and I'm going to put them down there on my floor, skylight back on. Time for the test. Let's see. Well, you don't usually get rain straight down or from just one direction in one of our big storms here in the Maritimes, so I'm going to give it a few different angles, let it swing around. So here goes. Spray, 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 spray. There we go. Keep going, keep going. It's keeping a lot of water out. Looking good so far. Okay. Let's see our results. Skylight off. Person out. Oh, looked pretty good. Didn't get any water on the person, but it looks like it's starting to leak a little bit. I don't know if that would hold up to a bigger or longer storm. So if I wanted to do some revisions, I think I would want to make some nice connections, seal that skylight so we don't have a leaky skylight. Let's get rid of this guy now and bring in the other one. Actually, look at this, we can do a double test. I can keep this person down in the basement if my, does that fit? Yeah, I'd say that fits. Let's do a double test. Okay, same one, here goes. Here's my storm. All on that flat roof. Okay, big test. Let's see what we got. Here, do this so I can show you. I'll take the front off. Oh yeah, no problem. My person is safe and dry in there. So it looks like that top floor worked well because down bottom, my person got wet down bottom. So when it's time for you to test your shelter, start to pour or spray water over your shelter like you saw me do. I suggest you begin with a small amount and then slowly increase the force of your rainstorm. I've done this a few times, so I went a little bigger to show you right off the start. But you should increase the amount of water hitting your shelter and or how fast it hits your shelter. Keep going until you get a downpour. If you notice water getting into your shelter, like I was talking about, pause to consider why that happened. Like I was thinking about the seals around my skylight. You can make small changes to modify your design and see if that impacts your results. Then check on your paper person. Did they stay dry? Reflect on the results of all of your testing. Think about what worked well and what you might want to do differently next time. Just before I wrap things up, I want to leave you with a few things to consider. Think about what materials might resist water better than others. Are some materials more waterproof than others? Does that always mean that they are a good material for a structure? Get creative when you build your shelter. You can cut and tape materials together, you can stack materials like a brick wall, or use any other building method that you can think of. Your shelter can be as big or as small as you want, as long as at least one paper person can fit inside. And if you're finished early, or you're in the groove and want to keep exploring, here are some other things you can try or think about. Change up your testing and explore what happens to your shelter if you pour more or less water on it at a time, kind of like a light drizzle versus a downpour. Look more into your material properties. How did the water change your materials? Can the structure be returned to its original form after it dries? Can the structure be reused after it dries? And for all of these questions, think about why or why not. We sure get plenty of interesting weather here in the Maritimes. What weather happens with other seasons? How would you modify your structure to keep your paper person safe in these other conditions? If you have time and can think of a way, try testing your structure under these other weather conditions. In a big rainstorm, what other weather condition often comes with the rain? I'm thinking about wind. I can think of two famous strong winds in Atlantic Canada, Les Souhaits on the west coast of the Cape Breton Highlands, and across the Cabot Strait, the Wreckhouse winds in southwestern Newfoundland, just up the Trans-Canada from where the ferry lands in Port aux Basques. These are southeastern winds that pick up speed and strength when they interact with the mountains, easily reaching over 100 kilometers an hour and sometimes over 200. How would you modify your structure to stand up to something like that? If you have time, try testing your structure in a windstorm. Okay, I've set up for a wind test now. I have a big heavy-duty fan to give me some wind off camera here. My structure's back. I have my spray, and I think things should get messy enough that I'm gonna go for some gear. Okay, let's give us some wind. Looking good so far. Oh no, oh no, oh no, it's too strong, it's too strong, turn it off, turn it off. Wow, okay, whew. That was a lot of wind. If you guys are gonna give that a try, you're gonna have to do a better job than me at figuring out how to attach your structure down to the foundation. Well, I have a little bit of a mess to dry up, so I'll just say to you, be creative with your shelter and have fun testing and revising. I clearly did. Goodbye and stay dry. Well, I hope you're not sick of me yet. I continue to be Adam at the Discovery Center. I hope you got some design inspiration and found the tips helpful for making your plan. Friends at home, now it's your turn. Have fun and try your best to make a shelter that can protect the paper person from a downpour. While you're working on your shelter, don't forget to share your work with us on Flipgrid, Facebook, and Twitter, following the links in the description below. I'll be watching for submissions to feature after the break until 5 minutes before we're back at 11. And remember that Discovery Center tag submission also counts for our Show Us Your Science contest for a chance to win a Science at Home prize pack. If you have questions, please reach out on the Discovery at Home page. Myself and our team of educators will be here to help you. Then, tune back in at 11 so we can see other tests and I'll modify my structure. Together, we can then reflect on our results, thinking about what worked well and what didn't, and why things behaved as they did. I can't wait to see what you make. Welcome back, everyone. If you didn't see me before, I'm Adam from the Discovery Center. Today, we're constructing shelters with the purpose of keeping our paper person dry. We talked about a few different materials and structures in the real world to help you brainstorm ideas before planning and building our structures. You saw me test my structure earlier in an artificial rainstorm. If you missed any part of our stream since 10, you can rewind and rewatch now or later. You should also be able to find the learning guide for this Downpour Designs program on our Discovery at Home webpage. Through my testing, I identified a part of my structure that I wanted to revise, to change it, since it looked like water was able to get in. I think my problem was around how to join together two different materials. So I've made a modification that I think will work better. In a few minutes, I'm going to retest my modified structure to see what results I get this time. But since laptops and downpours don't mix, let's first take a look at some of your builds, tests, and questions, and then I'll get this safely out of the way for my messy test. First up here is Guss's. Let's have a look at Guss's. See the person entering their structure. It's looking to me like cereal box board and packing tape. Oh, might be a hard rain from the cup. Wow, right to the downpour. The outside's looking wet but good. Let's have a look on the inside. Oh no, we had that same basement flooding problem. Cool. And there, showing that structure around, it looks like the roof and all of the sides of the structure were fine. It seemed like it was a flooding problem underneath. So maybe you could try lifting it up on top and retest that. That's definitely my first thought about where to modify that, since it looks like the water might have come underneath rather than through the structure. Let's see who's next. Here's Morgan's Mansion, going for the M. Instead of a person, you have a little cat. Looks like there's a foundation too this time. Very different structure, nice and clear. Thinking plastic wrap. There we go, here's a spray bottle. Oh no, too much power. What an interesting way to have a problem with that. Oh, we have a second test, right. There we go. So, it certainly looked like the material choice was waterproof, right, with that plastic and wrapped around, but we had some structural problems underneath. If that was a light mist, we probably would have got away with the water not making it into the cat. But the rain was too powerful here. We had too much weight of the rain. So if we wanted to revise that, I'm thinking the walls, the outside, is fine. So what we might want to change might be the structure, make it a bit stronger. Maybe we need little pieces of wood or something to reinforce it, or maybe that build would be great if it was just connected strong to the foundation. But that was a difficult test. That was some powerful rain. Let's have a look at who's next. Here's Lawson's little Lego brick house. Let's see. Well, there might be some wetness on that. Maybe that guy too. But I'm very suspicious that it's a common problem that we have when testing. Because once you go to check your person, everything's already wet around and your hands might be wet. So it's often difficult to get it out cleanly to see whether it got wet during the test or whether it got wet when you were checking it out afterwards. I want to talk about his structure for a second because I really like the different materials in this one. We have Lego brick for all the walls, and it looks like there might be a nice Lego base under it. And then we have at least 3 different materials up top. It looks like we have some paper, maybe some like cardstock, some heavy paper that appears to be waterproof wrapped in plastic and then attached down with tape. So this is a cool interaction of different materials. So it looks pretty waterproof from the outside. So I really wonder where that water came from. My first thought is it might just be there's so much water around that it gets wet when you're pulling it out. But I also wonder if the Lego bricks could be leaky. This might be an interesting one to retest, and if it's too hard to get your person out without getting them wet, see if you can spy on the inside. It would be hard to get that on film, but you should be able to do that test yourself if you wanted to try your structure again. Let's go on to our next. Here's Lola's little house, another lovely outside test. Glass house so we can see inside. Looking good so far. And it looks like that was pretty much a dry retrieval, maybe one little fingerprint there. So you see what I was talking about, how it looked like the person was dry on the inside, and then when you reached in, you might have got a drop of water, and it's difficult to retrieve them. This is a cool design. It was nice seeing all the clear bit and then another use of different materials on top to make the roof. Thank you, Lola. Let's see, who's next now? Here's Nora's tent. I like the different design type here.
So, I made my little shelter out of some pencils for the structure, and I used some saran wrap for like kind of a roof. And I made a little person to go inside of it. And we just taped the pencils at the top there so they'll stand up. And now we're going to test it.
Wow, plenty of water on tap here. It looks like a tough test.
Well,
let's see, Nora.
We need to see if she got wet.
The suspension. I think the reveal is cut off just at the end, but it looked pretty good from the outside, didn't it? I'm really glad that Nora had kind of a different design here so we can see. You saw my designs were very I did a big building and I did a house, and they were very those kind of materials. So I really like to see Nora using the different material and the tent style. And you see how much the tent made sense. It looks like it nicely shed the water. and on a tough test too with the whole force of the sink behind it. So thank you very much, Nora. And thank you everybody for your submissions. You guys ready to see my revised test now? Let's get the laptop out of the way. Ooh, excuse me. Okay, now that that's safe, here is my materials. I'm going to reassemble it with my basement here that we saw in, was that Guss's test where I think we had that basement flood. So I'm definitely going to keep that. And I'll put my person in the middle and rebuild my walls. Okay, so I'm back to where I was before with my basement and with my walls all around, and they're looking pretty tight. They shouldn't be too leaky. Here's my wooden roof with my open skylight. So in my first test, I had this bit of plastic from a salad container, and I just bent the edge down to try to just loop it over there. But it looked like it was leaking all in the sides, which isn't too surprising because I didn't seal it down very well. My person didn't end up getting really wet, but I didn't do a big test, not nearly as big as a lot of you did. So I'd definitely be worried that my person would get wet in a bigger test. So I'm going to revise this and try to get it sealed down. I was thinking I could just tape it down. That might be a good way to connect these materials. But the tape that I had, I was thinking it might get wet and then it won't be as sticky. So I thought I would try a different skylight technique. I have some plastic wrap, like some of you guys used. So I was thinking of doing a layer of plastic wrap and then what's the action for doing something with elastic? Anyway, holding it down with elastic. So I'm going to cut a square of this out and put it on. And this way there's nothing sticky to get wet and stop being sticky. There's nothing like paper that might tear. So here we go. Nice coverage. And I'm going to tuck that underneath. Now let's see. I'm thinking one elastic around the whole thing like this. Oh, get everything tucked in. I don't want any leaks this time. Really need to fix that. I have this turned around so you guys can see, but I can't see. There we go. How's that look? There. Looks good to me. I don't think I need my other elastics. I think that's worth testing. See any problems? No, I think it's good. Okay. Let's do a test now. Here's my water. And here goes. Oh, no, let's open it up. More flow. And even more powerful. There we go. Swing around in our maritime storm. Okay. You guys inspired me to go big, so I'm going to do even a bit more. Okay. So, tough test with my revised one. Let's see. I'm going to dry my hands, and let's have a peek inside. Maybe I'll take the whole roof off. That looks like the safest way. Look at this. I've got a little bit of a leak here. Let's see on the inside. I'll take my whole basement out so you can see. And it looks like my person is dry and there's no water in the basement. But some is starting to leak under. There's definitely some water down on the level of the platter. So I'm pretty happy that I used this little basement support to keep my person up. And I'm pretty happy with my revision. It looks like it wasn't leaking at all. And we could definitely see on this wood if it was starting to get wet. You see how it got a little bit wet on the corner there. But the seal looked much better than when I didn't seal with my other skylight. I was just thinking I missed one thing from the viewers. So why don't I go out on that? I was asked about tall buildings standing up against the wind, which is a great question, probably thinking about seeing my tall building blow over because it wasn't attached. So there's a few things you have to, when they get really big like that, instead of just kind of building straight up with an outside frame like I did, one of the techniques they often use is have a very strong core that the rest is attached to try to minimize the sway. But some buildings are so big or in windy locations or responding to earthquakes that they need to accept some sway. So they have a certain amount of sway designed into it, and that's fine. It also makes me think about what Jill was talking about in her bridge program when she was talking about sitting on the McDonald Bridge, the suspension bridge, and feeling it sway a little bit. And that's part of the design of that structure. The wind makes it sway, but it's fine. It can accept that sway. So thank you very much for that question. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us today to learn all about materials and structures. I hope you had fun constructing your shelter. Keep asking questions and sharing your creations below on Flipgrid and on social media. We also have that contest for viewer submissions. When you show us your science, you'll be entered to win a Science at Home prize pack. Don't forget to tag us. I'm Adam from the Discovery Center saying stay dry and stay curious.